I look forward to working with you and Ranking Member Wyden to ensure our tax code supports working families, to protect Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and to promote trade policies that work for Georgia businesses and that boost our economy. Mr. Bessent, good morning and good to see you again. I enjoyed our conversation earlier this week, and in that conversation, you outlined ambitious goals for the federal government and deficit reduction. I'd like to follow up on our discussion about your economic plan. According to a new report from the Tax Policy Center, the largest tax cuts from extending the Trump tax bill would go to those with the highest income, especially those in the top 1%, making more than $1 million per year. In fact, the top 1% of owners will take home roughly 1/4 of the benefits of the law, and the top 5% will get almost half of that. Do you believe that the wealthiest 1% of Americans deserve or need an additional tax cut?
Senator Warnock, I greatly enjoyed visiting with you. I think probably a better way to look at it is on a percentage basis. And when I think about the distributional aspects of the Tax Cuts and Job Act, that most of the benefits accrued for the working and middle people as opposed to the upper ends. In absolute dollars, as you just read, that is correct, but I think it's important to look at it in percentage terms.
So you believe that the tax cut that provided 1/4 of the benefits of the law to the top 1% and top 5% getting almost 1/2 actually benefited those at the bottom more than it did those at the top. Is that your testimony?
I believe that in 2018, 2019, that the households in the bottom 50% of income earners, the wealth increase for those households was three times higher than the wealth increase for the top 10% of Americans.
So we should continue to move in that direction and give more tax cuts to those at the highest. You have talked about high deficits as a national defense problem, and I agree with that. I think we need to be fiscally responsible. We need to work to close the deficit and bring the national debt under control. In 2013, Congress extended the Bush tax cuts for everyone except those making more than $400,000 a year. This bipartisan decision saved the Treasury $600 billion, helping to narrow the deficit. Do you agree that ending the tax cuts for those making more than $400,000 would help close the deficit and reduce our national debt?
Senator Warnock, I do not. I believe that you would capture an inordinate amount of small business people who largely are in that cohort of 400,000 to a million.
So you wouldn't cut it off at 400,000. What about $1 million?
That again, I believe these are small business pass-through owners, and I believe that we, as I said before, Wall Street's done great. It is time for Main Street to do well, and small businesses need to drive what I call the reprivatization here away from this government spending.
I agree that it's Main Street's time. I'm from Atlanta, so I'll say Peachtree and some other locations in my state. What about those making more than 10 million? Would we reduce the deficit by extending those tax cuts for folks making about $10 million?
So again, I think it's important that we put in incentives for them to invest. So going back to the 100% depreciation for equipment, that I think that.
And I don't mean to keep interrupting, but I'm the pastor, and we're known to be loquacious of speech, but I'm running out of time here. What about $1 billion?
So again, that I think that these are the job creators.
So there's no income level for which you would support raising taxes. Is that fair?
There is no income level that I don't think we should continue the TCJA as it was.
All right. I think our country is facing structural deficits. However, I think that to continue to reduce taxes for the wealthy and letting them avoid taxes based on what they already owe is not going to get us out of that problem. But I look forward to continuing that discussion with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much. And before we go on to Senator Blackburn, I just want to restate there's a lot of facts that have been thrown around in this.
Thank you, Chairman Scott. Congratulations.
Appreciate it.
And congratulate not only you, but Ranking Member Warren on your selections to lead this important committee. I look forward to working with you on the important housing needs of Georgians. Mr. Turner, welcome back.
Thank you, sir.
And welcome not only to you, but also to your family. I enjoyed our conversation earlier this week. I often tell people that I am a product of good public policy. I think about that often. I've worked hard, but I wouldn't be sitting where I'm sitting without some help, some ladders. Good public policy. I grew up in public housing, and I understand the security and dignity that housing provides children and families. Mr. Turner, do you believe home ownership provides dignity, security, and access to generational wealth?
I do.
Thank you so much. I agree. And unfortunately, during the first Trump administration, President-elect Trump repeatedly proposed to slash HUD's budget, including cuts and the full elimination of key HUD programs that help people afford rent and realize the dream of home ownership, which you and I agree is so important. If enacted, these cuts would have raised housing costs for millions of American families. Last time, Congress stepped in year after year to save many of these programs. This time, I'm not so sure that we'll be able to do it. Mr. Turner, if confirmed, will you commit to being a voice in the administration against severe cuts to HUD's budget at a challenging time, including programs that help people afford rent and home ownership?
Thank you, Senator. What I do commit to, you and your colleagues in Congress, you hold the purse strings. Obviously, the president presents his budget, appropriations. They present the budget, and you all vote on it, and the president signs it into law. My job and my goal, if confirmed by the committee, obviously, is to maximize that budget, to meet the needs of the American people, and to carry forth the programs at HUD. And so I do commit that to you.
Will you be a voice to hold the line to protect programs that provide the dignity of home ownership and make rent affordable for working class people, for poor
I do commit to having those conversations with the president and with Congress as it pertains to being an ambassador and a voice for HUD and to maximize the budget that we are given to make sure those programs are efficient and meeting the needs of the American people. I do commit that to you.
All right. I know you can be a voice. You're a preacher. They didn't mention that. Everybody's talking about the football player.
And we only have 2 minutes. And you ain't even got to your second point.
And you're a preacher and elected official, both of us, so loquacious of speech.
Yes.
But this is a serious issue because the racial home ownership gap has been widening over the last few years. Yesterday, we celebrated Dr. King's actual birthday. Monday is the holiday. And folks often talk about those two key civil rights bills, the accommodations law in 64, civil rights laws, voting rights law in 65. We don't talk enough about fair housing. That is a victory of Dr. King's. That law was signed into law just a few days after his assassination. Right. But that is a result of his work. The first Trump administration sought to weaken and even rescind landmark fair housing laws pushed through by Dr. King. If confirmed, you would be responsible for enforcing these fair housing laws. If confirmed, will you commit to vigorous enforcement of the nation's fair housing laws? Yes or no?
Yes.
And would you be a strong voice in the administration in favor of protecting existing fair housing laws from efforts to weaken them or to roll them back?
I do commit to upholding the fair housing laws, yes, sir.
So one of the overlooked drivers of racial wealth inequity within our housing system is the very well documented pattern of lenders and the appraisal market persistently assessing the value of black and brown homes lower than white homeowners. You and I discussed this a little bit the other day in my office. And my staff sent you some background information and data on appraisal bias. This is real money, hurting real people. In part at my urging, the Biden administration took steps to crack down on appraisal bias with HUD leading an interagency effort. If confirmed, will you commit to continue to use HUD's tools and authorities to crack down on appraisal bias, including by continuing to provide consumers with data to push back on suspected bias?
Thank you, Senator. Thank you for the information that you sent. I have begun to read, and I look forward to exploring that more with you. And as I said before, I do commit to upholding the law as it is on the book against all illegal discrimination,
Including appraisal bias.
We will continue to look into that, and I look forward to working with you on that and become more well-studied. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I hope you will continue HUD's important work on this matter, even as we go into this weekend of celebrating Dr. King's birthday.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks. Baby dog
like you.
trumps
We really
me
like
every
baby
single
dog.
day.
Senator Warnock.
Good morning.
I don't know how to follow that. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Bozeman. I want to take a moment to congratulate you and Ranking Member Klobuchar on your appointments to lead this committee. I look forward to working with both of you. I've met with each of you, and I've enjoyed our relationship and the work that we've tried to do and the work we've done. Ms. Rollins, good morning. And
morning.
Welcome to you and also to your family and all those who are here to support you. And congratulations on your nomination.
Thank you.
I enjoyed also meeting with you last month to discuss your nomination and plans for USDA. And this morning, I'd just like to follow up on some of the issues, many of which we've already discussed. But first, it has come to my attention that a recent executive order has led to the potential termination of USDA's liaisons to our 1890 land grant institutions like Fort Valley State University in Fort Valley, Georgia. There is strong bipartisan support for these institutions. They've done an incredible job, often doing so much for so many with so very little for such a long time that people, it's lost on people, the work that these institutions every day. I'm deeply concerned about this and the actions to shut out their voices at USDA. Ms. Rollins, if you are confirmed, will you commit to supporting our 1890 institutions?
Sir, I believe Prairie View A&M is one of those 1890 institutions, which I'm very familiar with and partnered as a student at Texas A&M and in the last administration worked with. I am not familiar with exactly what you're speaking of, but my commitment to you is to find out and to continue a really important discussion and to learn more about the issue.
Well, the executive order could lead to the potential termination of USDA's liaisons to these 1890 institutions, which help them to navigate their relationship with the USDA. Can I have your commitment to protect those who serve these institutions at the USDA?
Again, sir, I would want to know more and understand more before I can make that commitment, but clearly those institutions are important. They are bipartisan supported, and you have my commitment to have a very robust dialogue at any moment, any time of day or night to ensure that we have all the data as we're making any decisions.
I appreciate that. I've had good relationships and good work, bipartisan work, supporting these institutions, and I hope you'll keep
Yes,
your
sir.
eye on that issue.
I will.
Last year, I worked hard with my colleagues in a bipartisan manner to provide $21 billion to help farmers recover from natural disasters like Hurricane Helene. Farmers, as you know, do incredible work. It's a tough business. There's so much you don't control. The margins are narrow, and so I do everything I can to protect my growers in Georgia. I cannot overstate how critical it is for USDA to distribute this assistance, this disaster assistance to Georgia farmers as quickly as possible, but also as equitably as possible. if confirmed, briefly, because I want to get through these questions, how will you work to ensure disaster assistance is distributed both swiftly and equitably?
Yes, sir. Thank you. And I'll try to answer quickly so we can go on. The day I got the call from President Trump, it was Saturday, November 23rd. We were in our motorhome traveling across the country to an Aggie football game. Within a few hours of accepting the nomination, I began to immediately pivot to how do we distribute this disaster and so important economic aid, working with a few of the senators on this committee. Clearly, I am not confirmed yet, so this is going to await my arrival. But in the meantime, sir, we've already announced the undersecretary who worked on this in the last Trump administration, who is already building the team who distributed these funds, so they know what they're doing. We're not reinventing the wheel.
Will you work with our state agriculture committee, commissioner, to ensure Georgia producers, including our foresters, have the support they need from USDA to get that assistance without having to jump through a bunch of bureaucratic hoops?
Of course.
And will you also commit to equitably getting that assistance to all eligible farmers, including those who've been historically left out of USDA assistance, often due to discrimination?
Sir, we will follow the law and ensure that that is the case.
Is that a yes or a no?
Yes.
So let me move on to the next subject. Thanks so much. Fighting hunger has long been a part of my life's work, long before I was elected to the Senate. As you know, I'm a pastor, and the one miracle story that's in all the Gospels, all four, is the feeding of the 5,000.
That's right.
And so I constantly hear from Georgia farmers, Georgia families, about how their dollar just doesn't go as far at the grocery store as it used to. The average Georgian participating in SNAP, a food assistance program that provides critical nutrition aid to our most vulnerable families, has about $6.15 a day to spend on food. In your view, is $6.15 a day adequate to avoid hunger for Georgia families?
Sir, this is a supplemental program. I am just getting my arms around it. There is few that will be in my role, if confirmed, that have a passion for this more than I do. Serving those who are most in need, as you and I discussed in your office, is a driving force of my entire life. It almost sent me to seminary, but I ended up in public policy instead. So you have my wholehearted commitment to look and ensure that the people who need this the most are receiving it in the best way possible, but at the same time ensuring that all of the tax dollars that are spent on it are also spent in the best way possible.
One of the things, as these families struggle, one of the things that I'm concerned about are proposals to slash this critical assistance and create additional work verification red tape for families participating in these programs. Do you think creating more bureaucratic red tape for families will help them purchase nutritious food?
I think it's extremely important that we take a wholesale look at every one of these programs and ensure that they are serving the people that are needing the programs and that they are the safety net they're truly set out to be. Obviously, I do not like the words bureaucracy or red tape, but ensuring that we have set up the appropriate lifelines and the appropriate structure so that we can get these resources to the families that need them the most.
As we talk about work requirements, and I support work, I was raised by a father and a mother with commitment, who had a serious work ethic. But we want to help these families have a basic safety net. Most poor people are children. I think it's important to remember that. Most poor people are children. SNAP lifts children, seniors, veterans, and folks with disabilities out of poverty, and is proven to reduce health care costs and stimulate our local economies. If you're confirmed, I hope we can find ways to work together to ensure our most vulnerable families and our neighbors can afford groceries. I think, as someone, again, who preaches the parable of, not the parable, but the miracle of the feeding of the 5,000, I think it's the right thing to do, but I also think it's the smart thing to do.
Yes, sir. You have my commitment, and my friend Dr. Alveda King is here, and we have spoken of that multiples of times. So looking forward to working with everyone.
I'm her family's pastor.
Yes, sir. I'm very well aware. Thank you.
Senator Grassley.
Yeah. Congratulations.
Senator Warnock.
Thank you so much, Chairman Crapo and Ranking Member Wyden. It's great to be here. Mr. Kennedy, welcome. Welcome to you and to your family. Thank you for meeting with me a few days ago. I'd like to follow up, if I might, with some of the issues that we discussed in my office. I want to talk to you first about the CDC, or the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. I'm proud of the work that the CDC does, proud that it's located in Georgia with more than 10,000 employees in my state. If confirmed, you would be the cabinet secretary over the CDC. Representing HHS, it's about 29% of the federal budget. CDC is a part of that. Do you agree that the CDC's work is critical to Georgia, critical for our country, and the health of the entire world?
Yes, Senator.
Senator Isaacson, my Republican predecessor, would have agreed with that. Bless his memory. He was a fierce advocate for the CDC, as am I. The CDC is an agency filled with hard-working, dedicated public health servants. They wake up every single day working to keep us safe. I think we don't think often enough about their work, because it's easy not to celebrate the folks who are protecting you from that which doesn't appear because of the work that they're doing. So grateful for the work that the CDC employees do. Some of them are members of my church. I saw that deep commitment firsthand when I visited the CDC just last summer. Mr. Kennedy, you have compared the CDC's work to Nazi death camps. You've compared it to sexual abusers in the Catholic Church. You've also said that many of them belong, this is a direct quote, many of them belong in jail. For me, those are disturbing characterizations of the CDC workers that I know who are trying to keep the American public safe every single day. And as you are presented as the nominee for this position, I need to know, do you stand by those statements that you made in the past, or do you retract those previous statements?
Senator, I don't believe that I ever compared the CDC to Nazi death camps. I support the CDC. My job is not to dismantle or harm the CDC. My job is to empower the scientists, if I'm privileged to be confirmed.
So you retract those statements?
I'm not retracting it. I never said it.
Well, actually, I have a transcript
Of me saying that it's a Nazi death camp?
Let me read your words. It says that the institution, CDC, and the vaccine program, is your description of their work, is more important than the children that it's supposed to protect. And you know, it's the same reason we had a pedophile scandal in the Catholic Church. It's because people were able to convince themselves that the institution of the church was more important than these little boys and girls who were being raped. That's pretty provocative language. You said in another statement to me, this is like Nazi death camp. I mean, let me finish. I'm just reading your words. I mean, what happened to these kids? 1 in 31 boys in this country, their minds are being robbed from them.
Yeah, I was not comparing the CDC to Nazi death camps. I was comparing the injury rate to our children to other atrocities. And I wouldn't compare, of course, the CDC to Nazi death camps to the extent that any statement that I made has been interpreted that way. Yeah, I don't agree with that. In 2003, the United States Congress Government Oversight Committee ended an over a year investigation of the CDC and used almost that same language. They said that the CDC, just one division, one branch, the Immunization Safety Office, had put institutional self-interest and pharmaceutical profits ahead of the welfare and the health of American children. So that was a conclusion by Congress. And I repeated that.
I'm asking you because you're the nominee for HHS. It sounds like you stand by those statements.
Senator, my objective is to support the CDC. There's nothing I'm going to do that is going to harm CDC. I want to make sure that our science is gold standard science, that it's free from that same Government Oversight Investigation Committee found that the panels, the ASIP panel within CDC, I think 97% of the people on it had conflicts. I don't believe that that's right. I think we need to end those conflicts and make sure that scientists are doing unobstructed science.
So I want to enter this statement, by the way, into the record without objection.
Without objection.
Last week, the White House gagged HHS and the CDC, preventing them from communicating all important public health information to anyone, including all of our allies, including our allies in the United States and global disease prevention. Can you just answer yes or no, because I'm running out of time? Do you agree with that action?
I was not consulted on it, but that's pretty much standard operating procedure for incoming administration.
So you agree with the action that gagged HHS and CDC from communicating important public health information to the public?
That directive made sure that no public health and only non-essential travel and mass communications were temporarily suspended pending the confirmation of a new HHS secretary. This is standard operating procedure for every administration.
I get it. I don't think what we've seen over the last several days is standard operation for new administrations. I think we're seeing some unprecedented actions, but you agree with it. Last night, members of the CDC, along with other federal employees, were actually invited to resign, these buyouts. And I got text messages and folks I know work from the CDC, for the CDC, that do this important work, who got that note. And it's really important because my experience is that when you send out that kind of note, the folks who resign are the folks who you least likely want to see resign. They got other options. They're gifted folks. They got a lot of expertise. They have options. A lot of them are doing this work because of their patriotism, because of their commitment. Do you agree with the buyouts that were presented to CDC employees just last night?
I agree. At the vast majority of the scientists and experts at CDC are patriots and good government servants.
Can you tell me yes or no?
I don't think anybody's going to resign who's committed to making America healthy again.
Can you just answer yes? Okay, you agree with the buyouts. In our meeting, I asked you to confirm your support for the Affordable Care Act. You also mentioned that you and President Trump want to fix the ACA by making premiums more affordable. Can you answer me yes or no, as I don't have a lot of time? Did you know that tax credits that help families afford health insurance and save Georgians an average of $531 per month per person are set to expire at the end of the year? Did you know that?
I do.
We need to move on.
Do you support Congress extending these tax credits so that Americans can continue to afford health care?
Congress has to make its own decisions about that. My instructions from President Trump.
Mr. Chairman, you're saying I'm running out of time, but I'm having a lot of trouble getting the witness to answer yes or no to a yes or no question.
Well,
and I've got one more question.
You're almost at 9 minutes, sir.
Well, I need him to answer yes or no. Yes or no?
I'm not going to answer yes or no to a question that's not susceptible to an honest yes or no answer.
We need to move on.
I think that the fact that you find it difficult to answer basic questions is deeply troubling for me as you present yourself as a nominee to run HHS. Thank you so very much.
Senator Smith.
I've been in courts all over the country and prosecutors.
Mr. Chairman, you told me I'm out of time, and the witness continues to filibuster even after I said I'm done.
Senator Smith.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Ranking Member, and welcome, Mr. Kennedy. So, Mr. Kennedy, I don't.
Thank you. Senator Warnock.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Chairman. Before I begin my questioning, I want to reiterate the requests Ranking Member Warren and my Democratic colleagues have made to the chairman to hold an oversight hearing in this committee on Elon Musk's dangerous access to the Treasury Department's systems that control $6 trillion in annual payments to millions of American citizens, including Social Security, Medicare, and tax refunds. I can tell you that the people of Georgia are not taking any comfort in the notion that this unelected billionaire has access to these systems. I think it's urgent that this committee and the Senate Finance Committee have a hearing to look into this matter to protect Americans' private data that they are required to provide and is now in the hands of Elon Musk and 22-year-old interns. We are approaching the 2-year anniversary of the failures of Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, and First Republic Bank, 3 of the largest bank failures in U.S. history. A review of Signature Bank's failures found that the FDIC, the federal bank regulator responsible for making sure our money in the banks is safe, did not properly staff the team dedicated to the bank with regulatory job vacancies averaging 40% in the years leading up to the failure. Bank examiners are overstretched and overworked, and based on today's conversation, it is clear that banks are begging for more communication, more certainty, more clarity from understaffed bank regulators. The last thing you want in business is uncertainty, a lack of clarity. This is why I was frankly shocked by the FDIC's decision to withdraw job offers from more than 200 new bank examiners last week. Mr. Klein, you're an expert in bank regulation. Do you agree FDIC bank examiners are understaffed?
Yes.
And do you agree that this understaffing has consequences for bank examiners' ability to communicate with banks to provide regulatory clarity, especially when banks are dealing with newer businesses that offer complicated or potentially risky financial products or services?
Absolutely.
What I'm hearing is the Trump administration's decision to rescind job offers to bank examiners at the FDIC is going to make it less likely that some businesses, including the ones that my colleagues here today are concerned about, can access the traditional banking system, or that they will be well served by it. Is that fair?
Yes. One of my colleagues just talked about the difference between doing things with a scalpel and a 5-pound sledgehammer, and this hiring freeze is a really big sledgehammer.
I agree with that. And not only did the Trump administration rescind bank examiner job offers, they also emailed current examiners and basically encouraged them to quit, which will only compound our staffing problems for all of these businesses. Mr. Klein, in addition to harming access to the banking system, what other risks may arise from understaffing our bank regulators?
Well, I mean, people talk about the need to create new banks. New banks have to be approved. It's a charter, not a license. And you need people there to approve the charter. You need people to update your models. You need people to collect and promote data and information. And there's a whole host of things that could be slowed down by simply being unstaffed. In addition, the FDIC is a little bit like an ambulance. It comes in when a bank fails. We've had several bank failures this year already. And you need to have an emergency SWAT team who's ready to go in. The FDIC does a fantastic job of handling a failed bank. It closes Friday evening. Monday morning, insured depositors have full access to their money. That requires people, and it requires trained people, expert people, people with experience. Sometimes these things are more complicated, particularly in small town America, where you can't just show up 30 people and sit in a hotel and not raise some concerns. And understaffing this puts our ability to handle failures so that people have access to their money immediately at great risk.
So I think this is very important because there's always this sort of baked in assumption that having regulators is a drag on the business, but you're demonstrating through your testimony that understaffing these bank examiners is bad for business, bad for innovation. And everyone agrees that legal businesses should not be systematically excluded from the financial system. However, the way to do that is to hire and to empower regulators who can ensure banks are safe and sound and provide clear guidance to banks on permissible levels of risk, revoking job offers for bank examiners and pushing these experts out of their jobs in the precipitous way that we've seen, especially over the last 2 weeks, puts all of us who rely on banks to keep our money safe at risk, and it's a drag on the business. This is an issue that I look forward to continuing to work with this committee on. Thank you so very much for your testimony.
Thank you, Senator Warnock. Senator Kramer, thank you for letting me, thank you.
Senator Warnock.
Thank you very much, Chairman Scott, and welcome again, Chairman Powell. I want to echo the words of Ranking Member Warren and so many of my colleagues today on DOGE and Project 2025's illegal attack on the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Certainly the Bureau was not created to be dismantled. And since its inception, the CFPB has been the only federal agency solely dedicated to protecting Americans' wallets and pocketbooks from scammers and predatory companies in financial services. The CFPB reduced costs for Americans, returning more than $21 billion to Americans who have been cheated since its inception. I want us to focus on that as folks are talking about chasing after waste and fraud and abuse. The CFPB has returned more than $21 billion to Americans. Make no mistake, this attack on the CFPB will increase costs for Americans, and it will give the green light to fraudsters and predatory actors seeking to cheat hardworking Americans. And so, Chairman Powell, thousands of Georgians of all political stripes have written into my office, and they are alarmed by an unelected billionaire and his hacksters' dangerous attempts to access Americans' private data and the Treasury Department's systems that control $6 trillion in annual payments to millions of American citizens, including Social Security, Medicare, and tax refunds. Quickly, yes or no, has Elon Musk or members of his team, to your knowledge, attempted to access the Fed's protected data and systems? Yes or no?
I don't believe so. I don't believe so.
Okay, so will you commit to report to this committee, majority and minority, immediately should you become aware of any such attempt by Elon Musk or Doge to pierce the Fed's independence or to access its protected systems?
Yes.
Thank you for that commitment. The Fed's latest monetary policy report states that the tight labor market has allowed employment and earnings gaps between Black and Hispanic Americans and white Americans to narrow. I was glad to see that many of the long-standing disparities in employment and wages by sex, race, ethnicity, and education have narrowed under the Biden administration. Some gaps have reached historic lows. Specifically, the employment gap for Black workers and white workers is near its lowest point in almost 50 years. That is the economy that the Trump administration is inheriting, a historic low in almost 50 years. Chair Powell, as you work to promote maximum employment, what steps will the Fed take to ensure that these equity gains are permanent?
So the best thing we can do is it's both of our mandates, really, because as you well know, high inflation hits people at the low end of the income spectrum first and most. And in addition to that, we know that the benefits of a strong labor market over time can be really visible and important in those communities as well. So we pursue our mandate. We keep our heads down, and it works out that is the single best thing we can do to foster, closing those gaps.
You pursue your mandate. You want to make sure that it's working. Would you agree that we still need good equity data to continue to narrow and close those gaps by race and gender?
I do think, we're always going to be in favor of good data at the Fed, and we do have quite a bit of that data on our website.
But if we don't have equity data, it'd be difficult to know, right?
Yes.
I'm glad to hear you still believe in the value of good equity data for economic policy making. it's better to fly with the data than to fly blind. I'm not sure what's so controversial about the data. And while I was disappointed to hear that the Federal Reserve, which is independent from the White House, it scrubbed a diversity and inclusion section from its website after President Trump's executive order, while also scrubbing data on the racial, ethnic, and gender makeup of its economists and researchers, I hope you will continue to ensure that the public has good data on how our economy is working or not working for historically marginalized Americans. I also hope you will reconsider your decisions around the whitewashing of the Fed's website. Chair Powell, as we think about the value of protecting data on the black-white wealth gap or employment gap, I think it's important to understand what policymakers can learn from this data. Historically, from what you've seen in the data, historically, what types of economic events have caused the black-white wealth gap or employment gap to widen?
Well, high inflation, downturns, you see generally, just take the black unemployment rate, it generally moves at twice the speed of the white unemployment rate. So when it goes up faster, and when it comes down faster. But there is, at the end of the day, there's always been a gap, and we want to run a strong labor market, and we target overall overall labor market conditions for maximum employment. But one of the benefits of that is that gap comes down.
Thank you so much. We all know that fully deregulating our financial regulators like the CFPB, firing bank examiners at the FDIC, or weakening the Fed's supervisory capacity makes an economic shock or recession more likely. We know that this disproportionately impacts Black and Hispanic workers, and there are real consequences to weakening and eliminating financial regulations that keep us safe. Working people are the ones especially who suffer. So thank you so much, and I look forward to continuing to work with you to close these gaps.
Seeds would be used.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thank my colleague. Next is Senator Warnock, and then the very patient Senator Welsh, who's been here for everything. Senator Warnock.
Thank you very much, Ranking Member Wyden. Last week, House Republicans took the first steps to renew tax cuts for the ultra-wealthy. And based on their own budget, these tax cuts are going to cost Americans $4.5 trillion. According to the Treasury Department, the entire bottom half of working families, that's folks making less than $75,000 a year, will see less than 8% of the benefits. But they're going to be stuck with almost 100% of the burden to pay for these cuts, since Republicans in Congress are planning to gut programs like Medicaid, food assistance, Pell Grants, to afford their massive giveaway to the rich. Dr. Falkender, I'm looking for a number. If Republicans slash up to $800 billion from Medicaid, as our own budget suggests, how many of the 70 million Americans on Medicaid will lose their health care coverage?
Thank you, Senator. Medicaid is not a program that's overseen by Treasury, and so I have not looked at the impacts. Not only that, I'm not familiar with any cuts to Medicaid.
Do you agree that we might want to know how many Americans would lose Medicaid with $800 billion slashed from Medicaid?
Okay. Again, Senator, I'm not familiar with cuts to Medicaid. What I am familiar with is that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act actually increased the progressivity of the tax code. It increased the percentage of tax receipts paid by the top 1%.
So do you think that it's a good idea to take families off of Medicaid? And how many families are you comfortable with cutting off of Medicaid in order to get this tax cut for the richest of the rich? I'm asking you this because you're an advisor to the president.
Senator, I definitely think that having people find self-sufficiency and getting into jobs that allow them to have their employer provide health insurance to them is a much better outcome than having government provide it.
So you think Medicaid is a bad idea?
I think people realizing self-sufficiency and getting off of government dependency is a good thing.
Does that include the children who benefit?
I think children benefit when their parents are employed, yes.
Okay, so let me talk about something that you and I do agree on, and that is that our debt is too high.
Mm-hmm.
And even after taking away health care and education programs from families, which I think is a bad idea. And I'm not heartened by the fact that your answer to the millions of Americans who need Medicaid is that they ought to find some other path, regardless of their circumstances. I'm not heartened by that at all as an advisor to the president. But you and I do agree that our debt is too high, which adds to the burdens and the costs of ordinary Americans trying to afford a house, trying to afford a car, trying to make their lives work. Still, Republicans don't have a plan to pay for their partisan budget bill. I think that's a bad idea. So I'm worried that we're going to add to the federal debt. And thanks to these higher interest rates that we've already discussed in this hearing, that will result in runaway national debt. Our children today won't be able to afford a car or a mortgage years from now. As an alternative approach, in 2013, Congress, on a bipartisan basis, extended the Bush tax cuts for anyone except those making more than $400,000 a year. This decision made by Republicans and Democrats working together and finding compromise saved the Treasury $600 billion, helping to narrow the deficit. If confirmed, would you support a bipartisan compromise that cuts taxes for working families but not billionaires?
Senator, I would support making sure that America's small businesses don't see a tax increase, which is what would happen if we allowed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act to expire.
Would you support a bipartisan compromise that cuts taxes for working families but not billionaires?
Senator, I would support full extension of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act to ensure that America's families don't face a $1,700 tax increase.
Even though you, like me, you're concerned about the debt, you would extend this tax cut to billionaires.
Senator, as the Secretary said when he went through his confirmation hearing, we have a spending problem, not a revenue problem. Revenues are coming in line with historical numbers. It's spending that has greatly exceeded the historical average.
I think that the folks who are losing their Medicaid right now, who are without health care, and who, as a result of that, might not be able to work, would disagree. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Welch.
Thank you.
Senator Warnock, you're next.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Many of my colleagues here today represent states that are at high risk for large-scale wildfires. The wildfires are not limited to the West. Atlanta is known as the city in the forest because of the city's dense tree canopy, and about 2/3 of Georgia is covered with forests, putting it at risk for wildfires. In fact, the National Interagency Fire Center predicts Georgia and much of the Southeast will be at above average risk for wildfires over the next couple of months. In the last week alone, Georgia has seen over 4,000 acres burned, and neighboring South Carolina's governor declared a state of emergency due to wildfires. Mr. Bem, what are some of the contributing factors that are increasing Georgia's wildfire risk?
Thank you for the question, Senator. You know, our weather patterns are certainly contributing to the wildfire risk. What we're seeing right now in the Carolinas, what we saw in Georgia, we saw at Gatlinburg, there's a number of things that were really quite frankly shocking. I worked in the South for a number of years and didn't anticipate those type of fires happening in the South, and they do. And climate change, probably a factor. There's a number of factors to that. In addition, the lengthening of the season, again, we don't really refer to fire seasons anymore, it's a fire year.
Right. I think climate change is clearly a contributing factor not only to wildfires. I can tell you something else that climate change is clearly causing is more frequent, larger, and stronger hurricanes. Last fall, Hurricane Helene ravaged the Southeast, including Georgia. I remember spending time on the ground with folks who had lost everything. Helene paved a path of destruction all the way from the bottom of the state to the top, taking down 8.9 million acres of timber with it. Mr. Bem, can you describe the increased fire risk fallen trees from stronger storms create?
Yes, Senator, thank you for the question. So anytime we have trees falling in the forest like that, they will start to decay, and you get a fire through there, and they will contribute to the intensity of that fire. In the south, that might take a year for those trees to dry out and be a large woody fuel for a fire, but regardless, that's a significant increased fire risk in the state because of the hurricane.
So given that risk, how important is swift cleanup?
Very important, sir.
And I ask that question because at this time of increased wildfires risk across the Southeast, the Trump administration is firing the very workers who are responsible for mitigating that risk through storm cleanup and proper forest management. Will these firings help or hurt Georgia's ability to mitigate wildfire risk?
As I stated earlier, sir, they will absolutely hurt the ability for Georgia to mitigate the fire risk.
I agree, and I think we need legislation to require our federal agencies take on more responsibility to address wildfires. But if Congress does not provide them with proper resources and adequate staffing, we're not setting them up for success. I look forward to working with my colleagues to address these shortfalls as we work towards a comprehensive wildfire strategy bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. And I would add just one piece that through the bipartisan infrastructure law and the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed in previous Congresses, the infusion to the Forest Service was generational money to address wildfire mitigation. Even so, $5 billion, north of $5 billion, that is a down payment in what's really needed. And I don't even know what the figure might be, 20 billion, 30 billion.
It's an important point, especially since there are efforts right now in Congress to take that back.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Warnock.
Senator Warnock.
Thank you, Brother Chairman. A week like this in Washington reminds me of why I return every week to my pulpit, spending time with people in my church and all across my community. They are the folks who keep me grounded. These are the folk who are seeing their paychecks buy less and less while the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. These are ordinary people I'm thinking about when I consider whether Congress should spend trillions of dollars on a huge tax cut that overwhelmingly benefits millionaires and billionaires, while the entire half of working families pick up the tab through cuts to their health care. In addition to that, blow a $4.5 trillion hole in the debt. I am disappointed that Dr. Falkender does not seem to understand or care about the concerns and the experiences of hardworking Georgia families, the people I know. When we talked about Washington Republicans' plans to cut Medicaid, and I asked the nominee his thoughts, he suggested that people just need to, quote, be self-sufficient and just get better jobs with better benefits. Now, I was raised by a dad who poured into me a serious work ethic, so I believe in self-sufficiency. But almost all of the adults on Medicaid are either working or in school or they're caregivers. By and large, if they can work, they do work. These folks have jobs and responsibilities. They are construction workers, they are restaurant servers, they are home caregivers and farmhands. They're doing exactly what this nominee wants them to do, but he and Washington Republicans want to kick them off of Medicaid anyway. Who else does this nominee think should be self-sufficient? I wonder if he thinks Elon Musk should be self-sufficient. He's received $38 billion in government contracts, government loans, government subsidies and tax credits. Who does he think should be self-sufficient? Should children be self-sufficient? Seniors in nursing homes? Veterans, 1 in 10 veterans are enrolled in Medicaid. People with mental illness or substance abuse. Who is he talking about? And so let's be very clear. If folks want to have a serious bipartisan conversation about reducing our debt, I am all in on that conversation. I'm deeply worried about the debt that we're going to leave our children and our grandchildren as the father of 2 young children myself. You want to have a conversation about that? I'm ready. You want to have a conversation about lowering health care costs? I am ready to do it in a bipartisan way, but I am unwilling to give a massive handout to the wealthiest people in our country while blowing a huge hole in the debt. And because of that and other reasons this nominee does not share that commitment, I will vote no on his nomination, and I urge my colleagues to do the same. Thank you, Brother Chairman. Dr. Oz, welcome to you and your family. Congratulations on your nomination. I enjoyed our conversation the other day and finding out the friends that we have in common. My home state, Dr. Oz, the state of Georgia, is not only one of just 10 states in the country that still has not expanded Medicaid. It also has the dubious distinction of being the only state in the country where the limited number of families who do qualify for Medicaid are required to regularly complete bureaucratic paperwork to prove that they're still working the minimum number of hours to get health care. State officials call it Georgia Pathways to Coverage. I call it Georgia Pathways to Nowhere. The program is allowed under the state's Medicaid waiver, which is up for renewal this year. And if confirmed as head of CMS, you would be responsible for approving or denying the state's application to renew this onerous paperwork requirement. Dr. Oz, I'm not going to ask you to prejudge the state's renewal application. That wouldn't be fair. You need to see it. But since you would oversee Medicaid if confirmed, yes or no, do you believe that families should have to complete government paperwork every single month to prove that they're working just to get health care when they're sick?
Senator, I appreciate your question. I enjoyed visiting with you. My wife went to Union Theological for a while, different time than you. I brought her as a support staff.
Good.
To make sure.
That gives me comfort. Yes or no?
The answer to me is I am in favor of work requirements, and I don't believe we should allow.
Do you think a family should have to fill out paperwork every month just to get health care?
I don't think you need to use paperwork to prove a work requirement, and I don't think that should be used as an obstacle, a disingenuous effort to block people from getting on Medicaid. However, I believe we would both probably agree that there's value in work, and it doesn't have to be going to a job. It could be getting an education. It should be showing that you want to contribute to society. Frankly, you could volunteer at Ebenezer Baptist Church, where I did a show with you once. That would, for me, fulfill the requirement.
You'll never get any pushback from me about the value of a work ethic and the purpose that work provides, which is why I think people ought to have health care so they can get back to work. Very often they can't get back to work in Georgia because they can't get the health care. Let me give you an example. There is a woman in Dalton, Georgia that I got to know a while ago. Her name is Heather Payne. She's a traveling nurse. And, as a traveling nurse, some jobs were better than others. Sometimes she had health care, sometimes she didn't. She was among those folks who were in the gap. She couldn't afford private insurance. But she wasn't poor enough to get conventional Medicaid. So her health challenges and the unpredictable nature of her work as a traveling nurse made it impossible for her to meet Georgia's onerous work verification requirements to get Medicaid. She found out she had had a series of strokes. She had to save the money to see a neurologist, and then she found out she'd had a series of strokes. Took a long time to be able to afford to go. And now she's in the gap, and she can't meet Georgia's onerous work requirements. Do you think Heather Payne, a traveling nurse who spent her career providing health care to others, do you think she deserves Medicaid or not?
Yes.
Thank you. I agree with you, and since we agree, I think that the Medicaid waiver that you will be responsible for reviewing, I think that Medicaid waiver, in fact, I know it, it says that Heather does not deserve Medicaid. Let me tell you about another Georgian. Amanda left her 2 jobs in New York and moved to Warner Robins, Georgia, to become a full-time caregiver for her 84-year-old father, Thomas. Taking care of her father has become a full-time responsibility for Amanda. He's 84 years old. She's taking care of him, which means he's not in a nursing home, by the way. She's taken on that responsibility. But with all of this, she doesn't have time to hold a full-time job that meets the state's strict work requirements, and she has no income to cover her own health care costs should she get sick. Dr. Oz, do you think Amanda deserves Medicaid?
from what you're describing, yes, these are the opportunities we have to make the system better. If we both agree that people should be trying to get off Medicaid if they can, we should be able to create a system where we can track that, because there's the twin paradox, which I think we touched on in the office. Two brothers are at home. One's working every day, flipping burgers, making minimum wage. Maybe he's cobbling together $16,000, $17,000, puts him right above the poverty level. And the other brother doesn't bother working because he'll have the exact same coverage if he doesn't work. We want to make both of them want to move up the ladder. Like every small businessman, what's their goal? To become a big businessman.
So look, you and I have the basis, I hope, for a meaningful conversation. Georgia's pathways to coverage is a roadblock to care. They've literally gotten, I don't know, 6,000 people, I think, the last time I checked. And we got over 500,000 people in the gap. So I'm going to give you a softball. If you're confirmed, will you work with me and will you keep Amanda and Heather in mind as you consider whether or not to renew Georgia's waiver, which I think is filled with unnecessary and onerous work requirements, paperwork, filling out paperwork every single month. Will you keep these two people in mind? That's the question.
Heather and Amanda should be in all of our minds, and many others like them. I look forward to working with you. Maybe if you'll invite me down on a Sunday, I'll come to church with you.
Thank you very much. You're invited any Sunday.
All right.
You can't preach, but you can come.
Senator Welch. Senator Warnock.
Thank you, Chairman Crapo. Mr. Bisignano, welcome to you and to your family present today. Congratulations.
Thank
on
you.
your nomination. Thank you for meeting with me in my office a couple of weeks ago.
I enjoyed that. Thank you.
Thank you. I look forward to continuing our conversation. I want to follow up on some of the issues that we discussed in my office. When we met, I shared with you my strong view that retirees in Georgia who rely on Social Security deserve reliable, timely delivery of their full benefits with world-class customer service. And you've got a long record of delivering that in the private sphere. That's why so many Georgians and I were alarmed looking at what's happening last month when several news outlets reported that Elon Musk and his Doge team announced on their own website plans to permanently close 5 Social Security customer service offices throughout Georgia. These closures in Brunswick, Columbus, Gainesville, Thomasville, and Vidalia would give Georgia the highest number of planned Social Security office closures of any state. Those 5 cities represent 5 counties with over 136,000 people who rely on Social Security benefits. But since I raised the alarm, since I made some noise about this, Doge is suddenly out on X, I guess that's what you call the platform now, denying the closures that it posted on its own website. They posted those closures on their website. And now no one seems to know what's true or whether or not these announced closures will affect Georgians' access to their benefits or other services. So, sir, I know that you aren't currently at the Social Security Administration, and perhaps you can't speak to the plans hatched by Elon Musk or Doge without you. But if you're confirmed to lead the agency, Americans deserve to know who will actually be in charge of their benefits. I think we heard an answer from you a moment ago from my colleague, but I'm going to ask you again for the record. Where will the buck stop on this decision, specifically with respect to office closures? As someone who represents a state where they announced 5 closures, I made noise about it. It was on their website. Then they withdrew them and acted like I made it up. They put it on their website. I just need to know when it comes to office closures, who's going to be making that decision, you or Elon Musk?
Me.
That's a good answer. And so I hope to be able to follow up with you
And I'm
on that.
100% available for you, sir.
What was that?
I'm 100% available for you.
I appreciate that, and not with, I appreciate that, but so that the seniors in my state, those are the folks I'm concerned about.
Yep.
My
That
own
makes
mom
2 of us.
and others. Will you commit to keeping all field offices in my state open for Georgia seniors?
You know, I've asked this question more than one time today, and what I will commit to is that there will be no decision made without you knowing about it. I have no intent to close field offices, but I've studied nothing on the topic. So it's a little hard to commit to something without...
I think study is a good thing, and what we've seen so far is no study, no real knowledge about what's going on, just an effort to close offices to be able to announce that you're addressing waste, fraud, and abuse. And we all know this is true, regardless of whether we're Democrats or Republicans, because then they've had to go back and rehire some of the people they fired. And you're a businessman, sir, and you said earlier you wouldn't operate in this way. And the reason I'm asking about these field offices and these announced changes, because it could lead to an increase of 7 million visits to field offices per year across the country. The fact that they're now not allowing you to call on the phone. An estimated 200,000 additional visits in Georgia alone, which is why, frankly, I think that it's a terrible idea. But if confirmed, will you commit to increase staffing at Georgia field offices to account for this massive expected increase in appointments and to help ensure Georgians can easily and efficiently make appointments? Let me be clear about what I'm asking. If you're no longer able to call on the phone, which is a decision that's already been made, and you got to go online or go to the office and actually have an in-person appointment, you're going to have a backlog. So I want to know what's the answer to that. How is it that I can assure the seniors in my church that their lines are going to get longer and longer? I disagree with the Commerce Secretary who said, well, if his mother-in-law missed a check, she wouldn't worry about it. I guess she wouldn't. Her son-in-law is a billionaire. That is not the story of the seniors in my church. Will you make sure that they have access to find out what's going on with the benefits that they have earned?
Senator, first of all, thank you very much. You know, I've spent my career overseeing financial institutions, and today I serve 3,500 financial institutions in America. And that means we have community banks, rural banks, and I know what it means to have to serve neighborhoods and also serve rural communities. You know, my commitment is that it will be a fact-based, rule-based organization we run, that we will ensure we have the staffing to get the best level of service for our constituents. So I'm giving you a longer answer, but we will have the talent that we need to get the job done at a service level better than today's.
I appreciate the answer. I'm just trying to get Georgia residents, senior citizens, the benefits that they have earned.
Yes,
no
sir.
one's giving them anything. They've paid into the system. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Senator Blackburn.
President Trump announced his tariffs last week. The stock market has dropped more than 10%. We've talked about that. I'm more concerned about the impact on ordinary people. This for me is a regressive tax. It's a tax on families who are already dealing with increasing costs and are trying to figure out how to make their lives work. I heard you say, Mr. Greer, that you don't think this is that we're in a trade war, and you know, I respect your expertise on trade, but tomorrow the Trump administration will implement its reciprocal tariffs, which means businesses and families have had less than 1 week to plan for the largest tax increase in more than 50 years. So we are escalating, and so we can go back and forth about whether we think it's a trade war. I'm focused on how this is impacting families. Normally when tariffs are being discussed, businesses and industries have time to plan. And the government often provides an orderly and clear process for American companies to apply for exclusions from tariffs when it's not possible for them to sell a product without importing parts or all of it because no one manufactures it here. We all know uncertainty is the worst thing for business. I'm hearing this from farmers. I'm hearing it from folks in the manufacturing sector. So I hope we can provide some certainty. What should a multinational retailer do about their products made only overseas or that contain parts only made overseas. We're seeing this in our automotive sector in Georgia. Should they just raise their prices on families to account for the new tax, or is there a process for that company to reach out to the White House for an exclusion?
So Senator Warnock, the Section 232 on autos is a Commerce Department action. One thing they've done is they have said that they would be willing to give some kind of a credit for U.S. content in parts and components, and they can approach the Commerce Department about this. It's not a decision I'm making, but I know that this is one alternative. I'm mindful, when I hear this, obviously we're sensitive to these dynamics, but it just reminds me that we lost 5 million manufacturing jobs over the last 20 years, and that's part of the reason why we're in this situation now, and we just have to bring those back. So it's important to bring them back now before the situation gets worse.
But the question is, what do they do? Do they pass that price on to consumers?
Well, what we've seen is Ford and GM, for example, have announced actually that they're giving discounts. That was the big news last week. Last Thursday, they'd be giving discounts going forward. These companies often are going to figure out how they allocate costs among themselves, and it rarely gets down to the consumer in one-for-one basis.
So the company might figure it out, I think,
well, they can approach the Commerce Department to talk about the credits.
Let me go smaller. Last week, my office met with Angela Hawkins. She's the founder of Bamboo, a small business in Atlanta that sells bamboo-based sleepwear and sheets, particularly for people with severe and sensitive skin allergies like her husband. Angela's products are made overseas because you can't really find bamboo fabric made in the United States. What should Angela do? Pay the new tax, raise her prices, and risk losing customers? Or is there a process for her to apply for an exclusion from the Trump White House?
So, Senator, the president has said that in connection with this action, he's not going to have exclusions or exemptions beyond what's in the program already for certain products.
So she'll just have to figure it out.
She'll have to work with her business partners and find about sourcing, and
she'll have to either raise prices and risk customers. Basically, is the answer, right? Well, because she can't get bamboo here.
It will depend on the tariff rate. Every country has a different rate, and some are much lower than others, and so they're
she might even go out of business. Let's go even smaller. Early estimates show that President Trump's tariffs will increase the cost of goods by $3,800 for an average American household. Many critical baby goods like cribs and baby gates are produced abroad or made or have foreign-made components. I went through this not long ago as a parent of young children. For an expecting family in Augusta, Georgia, who may now see a 50% price increase for that stroller or car seat, what is the process for that family to apply for a White House exclusion? I guess if the business owner can't get one, they can't get one either, correct?
So there's not an exclusion process. That's right.
So they would just bear the cost.
Well, I think the studies you're talking about, the economists, they got it wrong in Trump 1. They said there was going to be inflation because of tariffs, and it went down. So when I hear them now saying the same thing, I just don't trust what they're saying. And that's, the fact of history shows that it's not a one-to-one. The highest inflation we ever saw was under Biden for housing and education and healthcare and all of these things. And it was, and I don't know where everybody was then when that was skyrocketing by 20%.
What if their child is potassium deficient and now bananas are more expensive? Last I checked, we don't have the climate to grow bananas in the United States. Who should that family reach out to the White House for an exclusion for that price hike on those bananas?
Well, again, as we've discussed, there's not an exclusion process. I think we've waited too long with the status quo. I know people want the status quo. They want the trading system that Wall Street likes, but we can't have it anymore.
So here you and I agree. Nobody wants the status quo. This economy is not working for working families, for ordinary people. And I would submit that what the president did last week in such a reckless and sudden way is adding even more pressure on these families. Thank you so much.
Senator Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Donald Trump is single-handedly driving this economy off a cliff with no evidence to back him up. He's claimed emergency authorities to slap new tariffs.
The senator from Georgia, Senator Warnock.
Thank you, Chair Bozeman. Congratulations to both of you for your nominations and welcome to your families. Over the last few months, President Trump has thrown the global economy and agricultural markets into a tailspin with uncertainty. caused by his sweeping and chaotic tariffs. I don't share the Secretary of Treasury's positive view where things are at this point. The president's actions have created uncertainty, and we see it on the ground. We see it with Georgia farmers who are worried about affording necessary inputs like fertilizer and losing access to critical export markets. Mr. Lindbergh, if confirmed, you would be responsible for international agriculture trade at USDA, and I remain concerned that the president's manufactured trade war will hurt Georgia farmers, who I'm hearing from regularly. And I'm concerned that it will push our allies in exactly the wrong direction, actually towards China. Do you share that concern?
Senator, thank you for the question. And as a point of reference, I've been a longtime acquaintance of former Georgia Agricultural Secretary Gary Black, and we've discussed trade issues and actually have worked together in the past. He's spoken at a summit I've hosted in South Dakota for several years. And so the short answer is I believe that Georgia's pecan growers face unfair tariff barriers around the world and non-tariff barriers on their products. I also believe that Georgia's shrimping industry is getting decimated unfairly by foreign imports that are produced in unsanitary conditions. And it's time that we take a stand and we provide better market access that gives your producers what they deserve, what they've been promised in many cases around the world, but also protect our domestic producers as well.
Are you concerned that these tariffs are pushing them towards China?
I believe that
allies.
I believe that the president is going to sign a number of new trade agreements that will open up market access for our producers.
So I've done a lot of work on this issue. I'm well aware of the concerns that Georgia farmers have had with getting their products, pecans and other products. I've dealt with the aflatoxin issue with respect to peanuts in foreign markets. The tariffs is still another issue. We've seen this movie before. And when it happened during the first Trump administration, they were basically subsidized. And as I talk to Georgia farmers, I would submit to you that they want trade, they don't want aid. If confirmed, what will you do to combat this isolationist strategy and open new export markets for Georgia farmers? We agree that we want to open export markets.
Absolutely, we do, yes. And I believe that the trade agreements that were signed in the first Trump administration are examples that we can live by. The USMCA, which was a bipartisan agreement, provided new market access. We could replicate agreements like that successfully to increase those market access opportunities around the world for Georgia producers.
I'm certainly concerned about the outcome of these practices. I haven't seen much so far that heartens me, but I look forward to working with you in the future to do everything we can to open international trade markets for Georgia farmers. I've spoken many times in this committee about USDA's terrible and well-documented record of discrimination against black farmers and the importance of federal programs aimed at addressing past discrimination and uplifting underserved farmers. I'm proud of my and Senator Booker's efforts in the previous administration to push USDA to break down the structural and financial barriers erected by the agency that many underserved farmers face, but the work is not over. Mr. Westhill, good to meet you the other day in my office. If confirmed, you would be over civil rights at USDA. Do you agree that USDA has historically engaged in discriminatory actions that have uniquely harm black farmers in their farm lending programs?
Senator, thank you for the question, and it was a pleasure to meet with you in your office when we talked about this as well. And as I've suggested to your colleagues and to you then, I've read the book on that particular very sad and bad history at USDA.
It's a yes or no question.
That is a yes.
A yes, thank you. So you're aware of the Pickford case, and are you aware that USDA has agreed to a consent decree settlement, which a court has blessed in light of that history of discrimination?
Yes, Senator, I'm aware of Pickford.
Okay, and do you acknowledge that according to an NPR analysis of USDA data as recently as 2022, black farmers were still denied USDA loans at higher rates than any other race?
Senator, I'm not aware of that. I'm not aware of that.
I want you to become aware of it. I'm going to submit this report. Chair Boozman, I'd like to submit it, this analysis for the record. If confirmed, how would you continue the important work to dismantle these structural barriers and rebuild trust between the USDA and farmers who previously faced discrimination?
Senator, I appreciate the question. I really do appreciate your strong interest in these types of issues. I think they're very, very important. It's one of the reasons why I've dedicated my career to working on them. What I can commit to is enforcing civil rights at USDA vigorously. The same thing that we did in the first term when I headed this office as Deputy Assistant Secretary. We would do it again. If there are artificial or arbitrary barriers that are preventing anyone from doing business with USDA, customers, employees, or otherwise, we want to make sure that those are broken down, and I'm committed to that.
I'm also concerned about this administration's attack on programs that fall under the broad umbrella of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. Following the President's DEI executive order, this administration haphazardly and illegally, in my view, froze funding passed by Congress on a bipartisan basis for many critical programs, causing chaos for the students and organizations who depend on those funds, including USDA's 1890 National Scholars Program. While I was glad to see that program unfrozen, it didn't happen until some folks made noise. There was a lot of a public outcry and the recognition that this shouldn't have happened in the first place. Mr. Westhill, do you believe that 1890 institutions like Georgia's Fort Valley State University are DEI?
Senator, no, I don't. I'm very proud of the work that I did in the first term to support the White House initiative on historically black colleges and universities, and I look forward to helping with that initiative again if I'm confirmed.
Glad to hear of your commitment to these institutions, recognition that they do critical work. And so if you're confirmed, will you commit to ensuring that USDA fully implements all 1890 programs as required by statute and intended by Congress?
Senator, anything that's in the law, I would make sure that if it's under my authority, that it would be enforced. Absolutely.
Thank you so very much. I agree with my Republican colleagues. Did y'all hear that? It's on the record.
Yes.
I agree with my Republican colleagues and even President Trump that bringing manufacturing jobs back to the United States should be a bipartisan priority. And that's why I supported the Inflation Reduction Act, which has been a game changer in this country, certainly in my state of Georgia, where it's helped to create 42,000 clean manufacturing jobs across the state. These are good paying advanced manufacturing jobs of tomorrow that often don't require a college degree. But last week, I released this report that shows that these 42,000 Georgia jobs are at risk under the tax bill currently being rammed through Congress by Republicans. Without objection, I would like to enter my report.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Isaacs, President Trump claims his tariffs will also bring back manufacturing jobs to the United States. Is he right? Will the president's tariffs on raw goods and component parts boost domestic manufacturing?
Targeted tariffs can play a role in incentivizing the reshoring of certain jobs or industries, but we think that they should be targeted and used strategically and supplemented by the positive agenda I've outlined in my testimony regarding tax and workforce development and the like.
So targeted and strategic is not words I'd use to describe this approach. Do you think these tariffs threaten the manufacturing boom we've seen in Georgia because of the IRA?
Well, I can't speak to the IRA, but with regard to the investments that have been accelerated under the CHIPS Act, I believe that they have the potential to increase costs of critical inputs that are required to maintain our competitiveness in fabrication and packaging and equipment and the like throughout the ecosystem.
God, it sounds like it could be a real drag, and we see evidence of that, a real drag on manufacturing by taxing these raw parts and components. We've seen because of global supply chains, obviously we need to import raw goods and component parts from all over to complete that manufacturing here at home. We've seen this in Georgia with Hyundai, with Q-Cells. These tariffs make importing those raw materials and component parts incredibly expensive, making it even harder to boost American manufacturing and to create jobs. Dr. Baskarin, I don't want to butcher your name. The clean energy sector relies upon critical minerals, many of which are not available in the United States. Tell me, what will happen to industries that cannot access the critical minerals they need because of retaliatory measures or because the cost of importing them skyrockets due to tariffs?
Thank you, Senator. When we started this hearing, Senator Crapo pointed to dysprosium, and dysprosium is a really critical input for automotive manufacturing. People think it's just an EV battery. It's not. It's actually in the stereo system in every single car. These minerals are absolutely critical for the automotive manufacturing industry. I'm from Detroit, and when these tariffs were announced, one of the first things that we saw were a round of layoffs that were made. Ultimately, every time we see a supply chain disruption in minerals for automotives, regardless of what kind of automotive. When things get significantly more expensive, we've seen that people buy less cars when the economy is weak and when economic uncertainty is high. They undermine the competitiveness of these really critical industries. So we need to be very strategic about tariffs to ensure that we're not ultimately crippling the manufactured good, because we have to think about it from a mine to manufactured good perspective. And if there's a disruption, it ultimately hurts the end good.
Would it send prices up based on your background and experience on cars?
What about cars? Sorry.
Would these tariffs on raw materials send prices up for consumers?
100%. And I want to go to the EV, right? When I look at an internal combustion engine in the U.S., it uses about 33 kilograms of critical minerals. An electric vehicle uses 210 kilograms. It's a six-fold increase. We sometimes think that if the EV industry was to be competitive on its own, it would stand up in a free market. But China has used $230.9 billion of subsidies to BYD between 2009 and 2023. But now if you go to Mexico City and get in an Uber, it's probably a BYD, right? We have seen that it is a competitive global industry. Ensuring that we have competitive mineral inputs is critical to sustaining the competitiveness of GMs and Fords in this country and ensuring that we can sell internationally.
Thank you so much. Congressional Republicans are currently trying to repeal clean energy investments and threaten the more than 42,000 Georgians who are employed because of the IRA. Meanwhile, President Trump's chaotic and punitive tariffs are punishing companies that did the right thing and brought that manufacturing back to the United States because of the IRA by making parts and materials so expensive. This is, in my view, is a 1-2 gut punch to Georgia's clean manufacturing economy. And these tariffs are making us weaker and weakening our position in relationship to China and making us poor. And it's long past time for Congress to reclaim our power in the area of tariffs. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Senator Welch.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Ragland, I appreciated your comments earlier.
Thank you, Commissioner. Senator Warnock.
Thank you, Chairman Crapo. Happy birthday. And I hope you get some time after this hearing with your family and your friends. But blessings to you. Congressman Long, Americans deserve fair treatment from the IRS. No one should be favored for their wealth or connections, nor should anyone be targeted for their political views. Sadly, sadly, attempts to weaponize the IRS are not new. We've seen this time and time again in our history. In the 1970s, President Nixon repeatedly tried to use the IRS to investigate his enemies, who included civil rights leaders, it included journalists, and even members of Congress. Luckily, multiple IRS commissioners refused to carry out the president's orders. These public servants, in my view, are American heroes. They put the rule of law above partisan politics, and in a real sense, they put it above their careers. They were focused on what's right. And in response, to their principled stand, Congress passed a law on a bipartisan basis, to prohibit any president from directing the IRS to target any taxpayer. Thank you so very much. I enjoyed meeting with you in my office last week, and when we met, you and I discussed how President Trump has called for auditing Harvard University because of their political stances. We also talked about how an administration official suggested that the IRS should stop auditing some of the president's top political allies, including Mike Lindell. And so I just have a few yes or no questions for you, and I want to get through this. This is why I'm just going to ask you some yes or no questions. You told me that if you got a request from the president, to audit a taxpayer, you'd follow the law and ignore that request. Is that correct, yes or no?
It's partially correct. I think that I told you he wouldn't do that in the first place, but if he did, I'd do exactly what you said, so yes.
The answer would be
yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
okay. You also told me that if you got a request from the president to halt an audit on one of his friends or allies, you'd follow the law and you'd ignore that request as well. Is that still correct, yes or no?
Yes.
You also said you would report those illegal requests to the Treasury Inspector General. Is that correct?
The IG's office, yeah, we talked about that. Yes, sir.
You would report it to the IG office of for the Treasury Inspector General. Great. And that you would report such requests to the Senate Finance Committee, both the chair and the ranking member. Is that still correct?
If that's what is protocol, yes.
It's not just the president who can exert enormous influence over the IRS. Clearly, the president could. After your nomination to head up the IRS, you received nearly $200,000 in campaign contributions, including from tax preparation firms who might have committed tax fraud. When we met, I asked if you would recuse yourself from decisions involving those donors. You very clearly said that you would not recuse yourself. That's what you said to me a few days ago, but it's been a few days, so I want to ask again, for the record, is it still your testimony that you will not recuse yourself from investigations involving these campaign donors?
I'm not going to deal in hypotheticals, but the OGE report, or whatever it's called, that I signed has very specific things on what I could be involved in and not, so I'm going to go with the OGE that I signed.
Do you think that in the matter of public service, perception matters, that taxpayers, that American taxpayers should have confidence that you are making decisions based on what's right for them and not what's right for you? Do you think that's...
If I wanted what was right for me, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today, but yeah.
Well, you chose to sit there, which is why I'm asking you the question.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, yeah.
So perception matters in terms of the public trust.
Right, perception's reality in the mind of the perceiver, sure.
I'm out of time, so thank you very much.
Thank you for the time in the office. I really, really enjoyed that meeting.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you, Senator Warnock.
Thank you very much, Brother Chairman. Secretary Besson, Georgians are deeply worried about the economy. Costs continue to skyrocket for families. Markets are volatile. Investors are dumping U.S. Treasuries. The warning lights in our bond market are flashing, and Moody's just downgraded our credit rating for the first time in over 100 years. While this administration's tariffs policies are largely responsible, the $30 trillion national debt is still the biggest long-term threat to our economy. Just last year, we paid nearly $1 trillion in interest on the debt alone, more than the federal government spent on educating and feeding our children. Secretary Besson, are you concerned about the trillions this Republican tax bill will add to the debt?
I am concerned about the stock of debt that we inherited. And Senator, I'm going to have to correct you. Costs have not skyrocketed. We had the first decrease in inflation in April. The inflation numbers this week were 0.1%. 0.1%. Markets are up on the year in the U.S. Tariff income is substantial. And the U.S. is the only major bond market where the 10-year yield, the 10-year yield is lower now than it was on January 1st.
You don't
not
agree?
Germany, not Japan.
Sir, you don't agree that this is going to add trillions to the debt? I didn't say that is your testimony. I think I heard it earlier. I'm looking at numbers from the right-leaning tax foundation, which says the bill will increase the debt by $1.7 trillion. That's the right-leaning tax foundation that says that. The Conservative Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget says that the cost is up to $5 trillion, and the nonpartisan CBO, which has served as an inconvenient reality check for both parties, says that the bill will cost $3 trillion.
No, sir, it says 2.4, and it also says there'll be 2.8 trillion of tariff income.
So they all agree that this is going to add trillions of dollars to the national debt. Here's the thing. I think most Democrats, including me, support extending the 2017 tax cuts for the middle class and for the working class. In fact, I think we should go further than this Republican bill on the child tax credit. You talked earlier about children. I think we ought to center children. We ought to take on child poverty in this country, which we did when we passed the expanded child tax credit. We are just not willing, I'm certainly not willing, to cut 16 million people, up to 16 million people off of health care and explode the debt to give tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires. 71% of the people on Medicaid in Georgia are children, 71%. If we extended the tax cut for those making, for everybody except those making over $400,000, we wouldn't have to be kicking all of these people off of health care. We wouldn't have to have these huge cuts.
Senator,
Let me finish.
I will.
Well, let me finish. We wouldn't have to cut all of these people off of SNAP. We wouldn't have to cut all of these people off of health care if we would extend the tax for everybody except those making over $400,000 a year. Now, that is what Congress should do, and I think that's what it did when it was extending the Bush tax cuts in 2012. It was a bipartisan deal, reasonable, cut taxes for everybody except the wealthiest Americans. Secretary Besson, if Republicans fail to pass their big, ugly bill, would you be willing to work with Congress on a Plan B bipartisan tax bill, one that extends the Trump tax cuts for everybody but the wealthiest, so that we don't have to kick 16 million people off of health care and take food from hungry children?
Well, sir, I believe the bill will pass, and I believe that everything you've talked about decimates small business, and one of the reasons that we have seen Main Street not flourish is the lack of certainty, because the propensity of small business owners make more than $400,000, and they file through the 1099 program, so they could be in the 800 to 1.5 billion range. I want to see small business flourish, not more government dependency, Senator.
I think kicking 16 million people off of health care is a drag on the economy. It's a drag on small businesses, and I can quickly tell you that in Georgia, where they're doing this work reporting requirements program, and that's what it is, it's reporting. They're not incentivizing work. They're kicking people off of health care. Most of the costs have gone towards the administration of the program. We got 500,000 people in the health care coverage gap. They covered 7,000 people. I think that's pathetic, and I think we can do better than that.
Well, I do too. I think able-bodied people
certainly shouldn't
should work.
replicate that to the whole country.
I think able-bodied people should work. I think the benefit should go to Americans. And as you said, if 75% of
The way to help
people-
able-bodied people to work is not to take their health care, sir. Thank you so much.
Senator Warnock.
Thank you, Chairman Scott. Mr. Traynor, you are President Trump's nominee to lead HUD's Office of Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity, responsible for continuing the legacy of civil rights enforcement in housing. So I'd like to ask you a few basic questions. In a now infamous Dear Colleague letter, you wrote about the, quote, false premise that the United States is built upon systemic and structural racism. Mr. Traynor, in your view, have Black Americans historically faced systemic housing discrimination in this country?
Thank you for the question, Senator. There is no doubt about the horrid conditions that our fellow Black Americans were subjected to in the Jim Crow South, and the Civil Rights Acts were not passed in a vacuum. They were addressing very real, deplorable conditions.
I don't want to interrupt you, but do you agree that they also experienced it in the North throughout this country, not just in the South?
Yes, Senator, that's undeniable. Of course.
Thank you. Please continue.
So at the end of the day, I have dedicated my career to vindicating the civil rights and the constitutional rights of all Americans, and I take a backseat to no one in my commitment to this. And as I indicated in my statement, I had made it a priority to do appointed criminal defense work so I can represent indigent criminal defendants who did not have the resources to hire an attorney and get zealous representation. And I represented them through the gambit, many of whom were Black Americans, Hispanic, men, women, and as I mentioned, even children. The commonality there is they didn't have the resources and they were vulnerable, and I advocated zealously for them, and I know
So I take it that you may be making the argument that it's class and not race. Is that the point you're making?
No, I'm saying all Americans are entitled to have their constitutional rights protected.
Let me ask you, what did you mean when you said the false premise that the United States is built upon systemic and structural racism?
Senator, as much as I would like to discuss that Dear Colleague letter is been enjoined by a federal court. It's under litigation.
So let me ask you this. Do you believe Black Americans still experience the consequences of that historic discrimination today?
Senator, I do believe that in a country this size, there is still discrimination invidious against Black Americans and others, yes.
Do you believe that Black Americans and other minorities continue to face systemic housing discrimination in this country today, and that still warrants federal oversight and enforcement?
Senator, the Fair Housing Act is very clear that race is a protected class, and if somebody has an invidious discriminatory intent and denying a Black American the ability to transact in the housing market, that is illegal, and we will vigorously enforce it.
So intent is the premise upon which you would prosecute this or pursue it. Do you think it warrants federal oversight and enforcement? Do you think it warrants federal enforcement and oversight?
Do I think that yes, if we have a complaint alleging discriminatory actions, there's facts, violates the law, we're going to vigorously enforce that.
You speak of complaints as if they're a rare thing. Are you aware of the amount of appraisal bias that we deal with in this country? Is that an issue at all on your radar screen?
I understand there are complaints as to appraisal value bias, yes.
What are your thoughts? Do you think that's myth, that people are making it up? Do you think the data supports that we have a real problem, something that the chairman and I have discussed, and around appraisal bias? Because this is critical. This is literally money out of people's pockets. Like, this is real wealth.
Senator, as I said in my statement, discrimination under the Fair Housing Act is not only illegal, it is morally reprehensible. And if that is happening, we're going to enforce the law and see that justice is done by individual Americans.
I can assure you that appraisal bias is happening. Are you aware of the 34,000 fair housing complaints filed last year?
Senator, I'm not in the building, so I can't speak to specifics.
Do you believe HUD has a legal obligation under the Fair Housing Act to try and reduce, if not eliminate, the housing discrimination that Black Americans and other minority groups have faced in this country for decades?
Senator, I can commit to you that if confirmed as the next Assistant Secretary for Fair Housing and Equal Opportunity, I will vigorously enforce the Fair Housing Act for all Americans.
I would hope so. We would be counting on that to happen. Honestly, based on your history, I'm not convinced of that, and I'm going to strongly encourage my colleagues to oppose your nomination. Thank you so much.
Who's next?
Thank you, Chair Scott. Thank you, Chair Scott, and thank you, Chair Powell. Good to see you. The United States national debt currently exceeds $36 trillion. Last year, we paid nearly $1 trillion in interest on the debt alone, more than the federal government spent on educating and feeding our children. Chair Powell, how does the Fed consider rising national debt levels during discussions about adjusting interest rates?
We really don't. We take fiscal policy as completely exogenous, and we look at the data that's coming in, but we don't, we're never going to take into account budget deficits and things like that.
Well, here is my concern. Maybe Congress should be thinking about it. The world is losing faith in America's ability to repay our debt. We have seen a sell-off in the bond market. The United States dollar has lost more than 10% of its value against the euro and pound, and is down against nearly every single major currency in the world. Back in May, Moody's downgraded the U.S. government's credit rating because of growing debt and sinking confidence in lawmakers' willingness to address this issue. Historically, high debt pushes up interest rates, slowing economic growth and setting up a dangerous debt cycle where both interest rates and debt continue to rise. Chair Powell, how does the size and the trajectory of the national debt affect the Federal Reserve's ability to manage inflation in good economic times and spur investment and hiring in slower economic times?
I'm happy to say that today, those things do not affect our ability to do our job. The concern really is that if we don't do something, then there will come a time at which it will be a problem, not for us, but for the country. But that, at this time, it does not interfere in any way with our ability to do
that. Is a realistic concern in the future, given the rate of increasing debt. And it's something I'm concerned about, and maybe because it's in the future, maybe that's why, folks who have power, who sit in these jobs, aren't as concerned about it as perhaps the Congress should be. I'm concerned about it as a father of a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old. I'm concerned that my Republican colleagues are planning to ram forward a bill that, according to the Congressional Budget Office, will increase the deficit by $4.2 trillion. So I want us to think about that. We're taking food out of the mouths of hungry children. This bill could cut as many as 16 million Americans off of health care. When we think about Medicaid, 71% of the Medicaid recipients in Georgia are children. So we're taking their health care, and then we're saying to these children that you'll have to deal with these trillions of dollars in debt one day. $4.2 trillion increase. Senate Republicans are trying to use a budget gimmick to claim the bill only costs a fraction of that by simply not counting things they don't want to count. If they don't like the math, they just change the formula. But the markets and those investing in our country don't care about these budget tricks. And I don't think it will help my 6-year-old and my 8-year-old when the bill comes due on this. They know the truth, and they will react based on the truth. The big ugly bill will put the United States on a disastrous fiscal path, and it will be catastrophic for our economy. Even worse, the big ugly bill is cutting people off of their health care, and for what purpose? To give tax cuts to the wealthiest. So this is an interesting moment for me, for someone who didn't know I'd end up in politics, who just paid attention to politics over the years. They're getting ready to create a whole lot of pain for a lot of people. And the question is, for what purpose? To give billionaires a tax cut. I think we ought to work together to prioritize extending tax cuts for the working class. We shouldn't be cutting their health care. We ought to save the country trillions of dollars by not giving more tax breaks to the richest Americans. And if we try to work together, we can save our economy from this disaster and still protect working families from a tax hike. I believe in tax cuts. I think working class Americans ought to give them, ought to receive them. And we ought not be burdening our children with all of this debt. With that, I yield, and the chairman should take note that the Baptist preacher is done with 3 seconds left.
And the people said amen.
Thank you, Brother Chair. Great to be here. Welcome to the hearing. Much of the funding for the CDC, which I'm proud to say is based in Atlanta, flows directly to state and local health departments. But the Trump administration's massive firings at the CDC mean that many dedicated expert staff are no longer there to assist and guide state and local health officials who are trying to respond to public health threats. And many grants that were already awarded to state and local health agencies are now left in limbo, with several multi-year contracts canceled by this administration, including some contracts that were already near completion. Mr. Chiarello, you're nominated to be in charge of financial resources at HHS. So please tell me, how is canceling active multi-year contracts awarded by CDC, some of which were 90% completed with most of the money already out the door, an efficient use of federal funding? To me, it seems unadvised and a kind of summary dismissal of work that's already being done and an ideological waste of federal resources. Can you help me to understand why this makes sense?
Well, Senator, thank you for the question and for your interest in the topic. You're talking about our contracts that I have not had the opportunity to work in or understand the facts, as I've testified before. I'll follow the law when it comes to the allocation of funds and the management within the agency. And so,
welcome to the hearing, and congratulations to you and your family. I questioned a nominee about similar contracts a couple weeks ago or last week, and I'm hearing the nominees come up here and say, I'm going to follow the law. That's good. I support that. It's basic, but it's good. But I'm asking you a management question, if this makes sense.
So understanding the issues from my perspective requires learning about the issues and leaning into the operating divisions to understand how those decisions are made, and then evaluating the allocation of the resources.
So you haven't had a chance to take a look, is what I'm.
Well, I haven't looked at those issues.
So if confirmed, will you look into these canceled CDC contracts to see if any federal funds have been wasted due to incomplete work? And will you report your findings, whatever they are, back to this committee? Yes or no?
I absolutely commit to work with the committee on their inquiries relative to the work we do.
Yes or no? It's a simple question, sir.
Well, as I've testified, I don't know exactly the contracts you're talking about, but I am going to look into the issues when should I be confirmed.
You will look into the issue and report to the committee what you found.
I will follow the law accordingly and report back to the committee.
I take that as a yes.
As I said, I'll follow the customs of it.
So let me say, I would urge you to consider the important programs at CDC that help states keep their public health programs strong, particularly in a situation where the grants are almost completed. We could begin to see the impact, it seems to me, and do some analysis. To have those grants then summarily dismissed seems more ideological than anything else. If confirmed, you will be responsible for developing and advising the Secretary on the budget for HHS. Do you agree that in public health, investing dollars up front through grants and other programs can often save money down the line?
Senator Warnock, I'm an antitrust lawyer, and as such, I know that there's different economic incentives based on when money flows into different projects. And you want to be able to balance the incentives, particularly when you're spending public dollars, to both incentivize the outcomes that are intended by the allocated resources, but also to do so in such a way so as not to create an environment that festers for waste, fraud, and abuse.
I feel like I gave you a softball question. I asked, do you think investing money up front can often save money down the line?
And I think I just answered the question only in that yes, sometimes
Laurie, let me give you more context. We all know that Secretary Kennedy talks a whole lot about wanting to address chronic disease, and I support that. I've seen it up close as a pastor and as a senator. But let's look at what he's done these last few months. On April 1st, Secretary Kennedy completely demolished the CDC's National Center for Chronic Disease Prevention and Health Promotion, and in the president's budget request, the center was completely zeroed out. This office ran programs at preventing Alzheimer's disease, diabetes. Let me quickly say that $1 out of 4 in our country on health care is spent on people with diabetes. It's the context for which, we see emerging disease and sickness. Heart disease, cancer. Do you think working to prevent Alzheimer's disease, prevent diabetes, when $1 out of 4 in our health system is spent on people with diabetes, does that feel like government waste to you?
Well, I answer that by saying I support Secretary Kennedy's efforts to focus on things like waste, fraud, and abuse, and also to make sure that the funds that are being allocated by Congress are getting to the people who most need them. And sometimes that involves reorganization or refocusing. And I look forward to getting into the position.
Brother Chairman, I want to thank you for giving me some extra time. And so let me just say that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And we literally see that in the work that CDC does. And I would hope that you would look at this, that you would take it seriously, because it's literally a matter of life and death. Not to mention the implications for the federal budget. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Tillis. Senator Warnock.
Thank you, Brother Chair. Less than a month ago, we received the heartbreaking news that a gunman opened fire at the CDC campus in Atlanta, Georgia. This obviously is my neck of the woods. This is heart-wrenching for all Americans, but for those of us especially who live in that area. A DeKalb County police officer, David Rhodes, was killed. The shots hit buildings on campus in at least 180 places, narrowly missing the CDC's daycare center. Law enforcement recovered nearly 500 shell casings. Clearly, he came to do a lot of damage. It's a miracle, and thanks to the quick action of Metro Atlanta and state law enforcement, more people were not killed. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation announced that prior to the attack, the gunman expressed discontent with the COVID vaccine and, quote, wanted to make the public aware of his distrust of the vaccines. Secretary Kennedy, I assume you are aware of these disturbing reports of the gunman's motives?
Yes.
And, I understand that some people may have concerns about new medical breakthroughs, but those people don't have the world's top medical experts working under them. You've been over HHS for 7 months now. Have you ever been briefed by CDC's career immunization officials to discuss your concerns?
And by the way, every member of this panel has criticized President Trump and demonized him.
Have you ever been briefed?
Are you complicit in the assassination attempts on President Trump?
Sir, I'm asking the questions. You are the witness. It's a simple yes or no question. Have you ever been briefed by CDC's career immunization officials to discuss their concerns?
Yes, I have.
What was the answer?
Yes.
You have been briefed by CDC officials, the career immunization officials, to express your...
The senior vaccine safety scientist, for example.
Have you ever been to the CDC as secretary before the shooting on August 8th?
Have I ever been there as secretary?
Have you been
No.
there as secretary before the shooting? Okay. Let's return to the shooting and the aftermath. Secretary Kennedy, I'm about to ask you a series of yes or no questions about the events of the past month, and I would appreciate just a yes or no response. You called Dr. Manarez to your office on August 25th for a meeting. Is that correct? Yes or no?
It could be. I just don't know the date. I'd have to check my calendar.
Was Jim O'Neill the man you just appointed as acting director of CDC in the room on whatever date you met with him, since you can't recall? Was he in the room when you met with Dr. Manarez? In that meeting, did you criticize Dr. Manarez for her statements to CDC following the shooting where she said, quote, misinformation can be dangerous?
I don't believe so. I have no recollection.
You don't believe you criticized her?
Oh, I criticized her.
Did you criticize
Not
her?
for that.
Did you criticize her?
I don't even.
Did you criticize her for her
statement
statements to CDC workers following the shooting?
Did I what?
Did you demand that she fire career scientists or public experts at the CDC?
Yes.
Did you demand that she accept the recommendations of your hand-picked vaccine advisory panel without further review by career CDC scientists?
No, I did not.
You didn't ask for her commitment ahead of time that she would accept the recommendations from the advisory panel? You're denying
what
that?
I asked her about is she had made a statement that she was going to not sign on, and I wanted clarification about that.
Did you tell her to accept the advisory panel's recommendations?
I told her I didn't want her to have a rule that she's not going to sign on to it.
Did you say that the CDC was, quote, the most corrupt federal agency in the history of the world?
Not the history of the world, but definitely within HHS.
Did you say that?
I did not say that, but I did say it's the most corrupt agency in HHS, and maybe the government.
So you called the CDC corrupt. Did you say that CDC staff are, quote, horrible people?
Horrible people?
Did you say that they're killing children and they don't care?
No.
Okay, I think that we all have a history of listening to you and these answers, but you're on the record for a number of these statements. Despite your lack of credentials and expertise, clearly you have an agenda. It is a threat to the public health of the American people. It's clear that you are carrying out your extremist beliefs, which is why you attempted to fire Dr.
Senator, we're the sickest people in the world.
Sir,
we're the sickest people on earth.
I'm speaking.
How am I a threat?
Secretary Kennedy, for the first time, we're seeing deaths from children from measles. We haven't seen that in 2 decades. We're seeing that under your watch. You are a hazard to the health of the American people.
Can I respond to that, Senator?
No, I claim back my time.
We need to wrap
You are
up.
a hazard to the health of the American people. I think that you ought to resign. And if you don't resign, the President of the United States, who put forward Operation Warp Speed, which worked, should fire you. Thank you so much. In the aftermath, Secretary Kennedy, I'm about to ask you a series of yes or no questions about the events of the past month, and I would appreciate just a yes or no response. You called Dr. Manarez to your office on August 25th for a meeting. Is that correct? Yes or no?
It could be. I just don't know the date. I'd have to check my calendar.
Was Jim O'Neill the man you just appointed as acting director of CDC in the room on whatever date you met with him, since you can't recall? Was he in the room when you met with Dr. Manarez? In that meeting, did you criticize Dr. Manarez for her statements to CDC following the shooting where she said, quote, misinformation can be dangerous?
I don't believe so. I have no recollection.
You don't believe you criticized her?
Oh, I criticized her.
Did you criticize
Not
her?
for that.
Did you criticize her?
I don't even.
Did you criticize her for her
statements
to CDC workers following the shooting?
Did I what?
Did you demand that she fire career scientists or public experts at the CDC?
Yes.
Did you demand that she accept the recommendations of your hand-picked vaccine advisory panel without further review by a career CDC scientist?
No, I did not.
You didn't ask for her commitment ahead of time that she would accept the recommendations from the advisory panel. You're
No,
denying
what
that?
I asked her about is she had made a statement that she was going to not sign on, and I wanted clarification about that.
Did you tell her to accept the advisory panel's recommendations?
I told her I didn't want her to have a rule that she's not going to sign on to it.
Did you say that the CDC was, quote, the most corrupt federal agency in the history of the world?
Not the history of the world, but definitely
Did you
within
say
HHS.
Did you say that?
I did not say that, but I did say it's the most corrupt agency in HHS, and maybe the government.
So you call the CDC corrupt. Did you say that CDC staff are, quote, horrible people?
Horrible people?
Did you say that they're killing children and they don't care?
No.
Okay, I think that we all have a history of listening to you and these answers, but you're on the record for a number of these statements. Despite your lack of credentials and expertise, clearly you have an agenda. It is a threat to the public health of the American people. It's clear that you are carrying out your extremist beliefs, which is why you attempted to fire Dr.
Senator, we're the sickest people in the world. We're the sickest people on earth.
I'm speaking.
How am I a threat?
Secretary Kennedy, for the first time, we're seeing deaths from children from measles. We haven't seen that in 2 decades. We're seeing that under your watch. You are a hazard to the health of the American people.
Can I respond to that, Senator?
No, I claim back my time.
We need to wrap
You are
up.
a hazard to the health of the American people. I think that you ought to resign. And if you don't resign, the President of the United States, who put forward Operation Warp Speed, which worked, should fire you. Thank you so much.